We are live, everyone. Welcome to Politics NY with Sky. I am the sole moderator tonight, so that means we're definitely going to have fun because whenever Steve is here, he throws in like a really in the weeds question and everyone gets bored. So it's just me. So welcome panelists, candidates, welcome to our live audience. There's Mamnun. Every candidate who's on the ballot for District 39 was invited to participate in this debate. And if there's someone who isn't here, who joins, who wants to join, if you're on the ballot, you can be here. That's what we're all about at Schneps Media and Politics NY. We are here to provide the platform for the candidates to be heard because in life before the virus, that's what we would do. We would meet and greet and chat in the community and have some chit chat in the supermarket or wherever we would be, but that's not really happening this year. So that's the opportunity we're affording candidates to be candid and cool and fun. And I want to say a special thank you to our partners at Brooklyn Public Library who are working with us to promote voter education and engagement for the 2021 local elections. So this is the competition for District 39. This is Brad Lander's seat in Brooklyn, encompassing Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Columbia Waterfront, Gowanus, Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, Borough Park, and Kensington. And today's debate can be more like a discussion. I have a feeling there's some camaraderie between the candidates, so it should make it more fun that way, as opposed to some contentious debates that I've moderated where people really get nasty. But we're open to anything, and we'll just ask you to keep your comments to 90 seconds. That's what we'll do, 90 seconds. And if anyone is attacked, you can respond, and we'll watch the fun. So welcome, everyone, and let's go in order. I put you in order by alphabetical by first name. That's what I did on my screen. So Brandon's first here, but I'd like to give each person 90 seconds to tell us what it is about yourself and your experience that makes you the best candidate for District 39. That's the intro question. And as a reminder, you're speaking to a live audience. So live audience, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the Q&A and we'll try and incorporate them in. And you're speaking to the voters because this is recorded and it'll be on YouTube so anyone can come back and watch it. So Brandon, 90 seconds. What is it about yourself and your experience that makes you the best guy for the job as council member for District 39?
Great. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. As I said, my name is Brandon West. My background is I'm a voting rights advocate and also a union organizer and a racial justice activist. So to answer that question, no, I'm really running in this race to represent all residents and not just those who have money and access to power. So I'm running to really fight for a people's budget that invests in communities and puts people before developers and builds power for workers and the marginalized. And also, I'm a Black man and I've had to deal with systemic racism all my life. So some of these things are lived experiences for me. And I believe that deep down that we fight for Black and brown people in our city, we will build a truly equitable and just city for everyone. So what do I have unique? I put it as a turn the values into action because I have deep roots and experience in public policy. I believe in community-led solutions. Budget analyst at City Hall and at the mayor's office. And as former president of New Kings Democrats, I've helped get hundreds of new people involved in local politics and really building power in their community. So we need to center all of government decisions with a racial, gender, and economic justice lens. And that's my inside and outside background has really proven that I believe I can do the job really well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Briget Rein. Tell us about yourself and what is it about you that makes you the best candidate, most equipped for District 39?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Briget Rein, 24-year resident of Cobble Hill. I also am a teacher, I'm a union organizer, and I was a community activist and still am. And I was a City Hall liaison for the United Federation of Teachers. So I've been doing that for 18 years. So I'll tell everybody in this room here, if you need a good tour guide of City Hall, you can count on me. I also am a member of Community Board 6, and that makes me uniquely experienced. I've been doing some work in the community so far. I've been working on behalf of the Gowanus houses, making sure people had heat and gas while Thanksgiving was happening so they can have a proper Thanksgiving meal. I've been helping people at 70 Prospect Park West by contacting Greenbrook Partners and making sure that they know that they're doing wrong for our community of 70 Prospect Park West. I also been working extremely hard to reach out to the Parks Department on behalf of a member of our community. That son broke his arm at a skateboard park, and I've contacted them too. I've called the mayor's office on behalf of community. I've worked on tenants' rights just now. Just doing this now, doing the work now. We need to support. Oh, I have to cut. But
Yeah.
I am the most experienced out of everybody in this race, and I've been doing the work.
Thank you. I know we're trying to keep it to 90 seconds. That way.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. Let's hear from Doug Schneider next. And again, I have to plug his TikTok video, not because I'm biased, but because it's actually the best TikTok video. If you haven't seen it, Doug Schneider.
Thank you, Sky, and thank you, Schneps Media, PoliticsNY, my fellow candidates for being here. I am Doug Schneider. I am a civil rights attorney, a street safety advocate, and a public school parent. And those are the issues that are at the heart of my campaign. I became a civil rights attorney because I wanted to help people in their time of greatest need. And this is the same reason that I'm running for city council. The most fundamental part of a council member's job is to provide constituent services. And this is why earlier today, I released a constituent services platform, laying out my commitment to serving our district. Now, constituent services may not be as exciting as, say, my TikTok video, but at the end of the day, people want and deserve a council member who is committed to making sure that our streets are safe, our seniors are getting the services they need, and that vital information is reaching people in the languages that they speak. And so this is my promise to you. As your next city council member, I will always put your needs first, because I fundamentally believe that when a council member centers constituent needs, the whole community wins. So thank you very much, and I really look forward to tonight's conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know Jessica Simmons just joined us. So welcome, Jessica. We are doing 90-second introductions where you tell us about yourself, but what is it specifically about yourself and your experience that would make you the best candidate here for Council District 39?
Thank you. I first want to thank Justin, because if it wasn't for Justin, I would not have known about this debate. I was informed about it about an hour or two ago. And so it just underlines, I think, one of the strengths that I have is that I've not been in government. I've not been in politics. I don't have a huge infrastructure for my campaign. I'm a mom. I'm working a full-time job. And I really believe that I have what it takes to lead our city into this next phase. And you can imagine my disappointment to find that there are opportunities to share more about my campaign that I would miss if a fellow opponent didn't let me know. So thank you, Justin, for letting me know. I'm an educator. I've been in education for the past 20 years, and I'm running because I believe in our community. And I believe that every resident in our community needs to be heard, and that our residents are going to be heard not by politicians or people who have been in government, but by the people who know what the issues are that are facing our families and our residents every day. I believe that I have the experience and the leadership to lead our community through this. And I'm running because I want this community to be a place where people can continue to thrive, including my son and his generation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jessica. And to reiterate, this platform through Schneps Media and PoliticsNY, our goal is to have everyone's voices heard. So we're so happy that you're here and that everyone's here to talk about their platform, because there are few and far between opportunities this year, especially. So thank you. Justin Krebs.
Great. Thanks, Sky. Thanks for being one of the most fun people in politics online in New York. Everyone should check out the 3 questions in 3 minutes. And thanks, Shahana, Mamnun, Brandon, Doug, Briget, Jessica, for all being here. It's a great group. So the people of the 39th district are in luck. Now, my background is a 20-year political organizer. I've run the campaigns team at Move On, where we've done some of the largest campaigns around reproductive justice, immigration, healthcare, impeachment, elections, climate. And I've worked on small campaigns, narrow campaigns, local campaigns on parks and advocacy, arts and culture. I've started a theater that's been around for about 18 years. Voter participation, parent organizing. As a parent leader in the district, has been a big focus over the last few years, and food pantry organizing in the course of this pandemic. A theme of all this work, and this goes to your question, Skye, is that I bring folks together to get things done that we can't do on our own, to try to invest in and use our social capital to make things that serve public good in a public sphere, and that really show that we're all in this together, and we're better off when we are together. That's what I want to do in this campaign. My focus on schools isn't just the advocacy I want to do or what I want to do when I'm in city council. I'm using my campaign to actually organize on behalf of our schools. And AM New York, which is a Schneps property, actually covered our work on that today. The work we're doing to survey remote families, to understand whether they're returning in the fall and what we can do to help them. We did a citywide survey, not because I'm seeking votes from the folks citywide, but because I actually want to understand how we get our schools open. That combination of big activism, local focus, community orientation, and the experience, building organizations, running teams, managing budgets, building coalitions, all of which will help take a city council member who, let's face it, is one of 51 votes in city council, and really help you figure out how to move an agenda citywide, put focus on things that matter and get things done. So I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited to be with everyone. I don't have a TikTok video to promote. Again, my name is Justin Krebs, justin2021.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Mamnun. You're on mute.
Ugh, come on.
I hear other noise.
There you are, yes.
There you are.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Mamnun Haq. I'm a labor organizer, a public health advocate, an immigrant, and a working class New Yorker. I immigrated to New York 30 years ago this month from Bangladesh and settled in Kensington here in District 39. I'm a co-founder of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance, the largest taxi cab union in the country. I worked for Drivers' Right for over 20 plus years, including co-organizing two of the largest taxi cab strike in the history of New York City and advocating for the Taxi Drivers Protection Act after a passenger stabbed me while I was driving from the back seat. For the last 13 years, I worked as a community health worker, work directly with the Bangladeshi and South Asian, the New Yorkers, helping them manage and prevent chronic health issues and navigating our complicated healthcare system. And within the district, what I am doing, I work closely with Councilmember Brad Lander for the last 11 years in the district, and to ensure proper translations of the materials advocated for the Bangladeshi liaison position in our area to provide direct services to the constituents, register new voters, help start and expand participatory budgeting, and initiate the development and community support for the Avenue C Plaza, one of the few public spaces available in Kensington. But my vision for City Council as a member, reinvesting in our communities by building and ensuring affordable and dignified housing, providing pathway for job growth and higher education, and improving multilingual services, establishing a healthier future, prioritizing a cultural, competent mental health care, and increasing access to the frontline care for immigrant communities and communities of color. And protecting all workers. And my run, actually, the City Council is an extension of my life. And I truly believe that my grassroots experience and institutional knowledge will equip me well for the role. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamnun. And Shahana.
Thank you so much. Good evening, folks, and big thanks to PoliticsNY for bringing us together in this forum. I'm Shahana Hanif, and I'm running because I love Brooklyn. I was born and raised in the 39th District's Kensington neighborhood. I'm a daughter of Bangladeshi Muslim immigrants. As a lupus survivor, I've navigated our city's nebulous healthcare system and transit and accessibility, and those were the catalyst for my fight to fight for all of us. I've organized with communities across my district and the city to protect working class tenants, expand immigrant rights, create public plazas. Avenue C Plaza was a product of our coalition, fight for gender equity, bring justice to survivors of domestic violence, and so much more. And more recently, I served as the Director of Organizing and Community Engagement at current Councilmember Brad Lander's office, where I led constituent services and participatory budgeting. It is during my time I oversaw over $4 million spent across the district, from public school and library improvements to a down payment at the 7th Avenue FG station, which is a hospital corridor in our district, and to self-defense classes and so much more. I am prepared to move our district forward every single day and continue the fight to divest the NYPD, fully fund and integrate our public schools, fund our public parks and open spaces, and make this city language accessible. I've been endorsed by over 40 organizations, elected officials, and hundreds of community members, including the Working Families Party, Sunrise, New York City, the Jewish Vote, Indivisible Nation, Brooklyn, Sierra Club. I want you all to join our movement and rank me as your #1 candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. And in everyone's introductions, we learned a little bit about them and the issues that matter to them. So the next question is, we'll go around and we'll dive into some of these issues. And let's begin with you, Justin. Tell us what you feel is the #1 issue in your community and how you gonna fix it. And you 90 seconds.
I mean, we fix it the way we fix anything, by working together. But the focus I would have, first, last, and most frequent thing I talk about is schools. I have 3 daughters who go to PS 39, and I've served on the district-wide leadership of the President's Council. So it means that I've gotten to work with parent leaders all across the district. One of the reasons that more than 30 PTA leaders have endorsed the campaign. And I'm really proud of that, because these are folks that I've worked with, thinking about how do we support parents to support their schools? How do we support teachers? How do we support administrators who are unsung heroes this year? Now, some people want to talk about schools because they're running for city council, but I'm running for city council because I want to talk about schools. Even before COVID, had to prioritize our schools, integrate our schools, resource our schools was a top topic. And then COVID hit. And I think we saw that getting kids back into school full-time, in person, in safe, equitable, resourced ways is a real challenge and also has to be a real priority. Now, hopefully this gets done before I'm elected. I won't take office till January, and I'm praying that kids across the city have the experience my 3 kids have now, which is going to school 5 days a week, in person, with live teachers. But unless we plan for it, unless we do more than pledge it, we actually organize, and that means involving stakeholders from around the city, teachers, administrators, parents, especially parents from communities of color who have chosen remote options at a much higher percentage than white parents. We need to hear from them about what will make the fall work. And we need to have that plan before June 25th, the last day of school. Otherwise, it'll be chaos until September 13th, the first day of school. So talking about schools and using my campaign to organize on behalf of schools has been a priority, will continue to be a priority. And then when we get back into schools, making sure we're investing in enrichment, making sure we're investing in small cohort learning, smaller classes, individualized educational approaches, more outdoor learning, art, I said enrichment, but arts, music, STEM, all of these need to be part of not just the schools whose PAs can afford it or whose principals know how to navigate the system. These are baselines of service that we can provide for students all across the city. And I would become forward as a champion on schools that prioritizes them to grow the school budget every year and works as a representative of this district and of District 15 to promote integration efforts citywide.
Thank you. I like that answer. Does anyone, I'm going to pick someone else to do like Justin did, an issue that you're passionate about and what you will do to fix it. Let's go to Brandon West.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, I have a background in budgets, and I'm passionate about budgets. And it is wonky, but there's really a lot about power in terms of how our budget in the city operates, because the budget is a moral document, what's funded and what's not funded. And we really need to create a city that works for all New Yorkers. And we can do that through a people's budget. So my top issue is really changing the way we're thinking about this and organizing around that. So your people's budget divests from over-policing New Yorkers, but invests in our communities. So what does that mean? That means that we're investing in all forms of care. So that's mental health care, elder care, child care. That means we have, real affordable housing. We have worker protections, particularly since our economy is shifting to gig workers, restorative justice programs in our schools. These are the things that keeps communities safe and powerful. And that is what we need to invest in. And we need a process for that. So, I spent time as a co-facilitator within participatory budgeting. We have a really great program here in the 39th. I spent a little bit of time working in the 33rd, just across the district line, particularly in the NYCHA complex. But, that is a small part of the council members' discretionary budget. Right now, the current budget is around $100 billion. That money isn't going to people who need it most. And we need a year-long process to really build out how communities are engaged in what's going on in the budget and being able to advocate for the things that they need, because reality is city council and a lot of elected officials, there's a gatekeeping element to it, and we need to break that gate in letting communities advocate for things that they need themselves. So I want to make this sexy, and I want to really focus on how we can bring folks in throughout the year to talk about these issues, and people can better advocate for their own needs.
Yeah, that's great. Making budgets sexy. I like that. So, and I know you touched on police and someone else touched on police too. We'll get into police as a whole nother issue. Let's go to Briget Rein. What would you say is your number one thing that you're passionate about and how you would fix it?
Well, I'm so happy that Justin started off about schools, since I'm a teacher and I've been a teacher for that's my passion, being a teacher. So what I've been doing, and what I've participated in, is as working with the UFT. I started off in February doing the PPE, giving out PPEs to all the schools, making sure, doing their safety checks, making sure that they're safe for reopening. And I've been doing that as we speak, and I still do that. And then I moved over into the vaccination program, making sure that and I've got my union has done a great job with vaccinating all the teachers. So I've been working on that vaccination program. So making sure that all the teachers get vaccinated, making sure that they're checked in and they're vaccinated and they have a good, atmosphere getting the vaccination instead of fear. So schools are my thing. I want the schools to be reopened. I think that it's an important way of getting us back to normalcy. We have to have our schools open 5 days a week. We have to have our in-person learning. I'll work together with Anita Scott, our District 15 superintendent, and the teachers union and CSA and DC 37, just to make sure that we have openings of school that bring joy to the students, and that the students are bringing, that they're coming back to life after this disease. So schools are very important to me. I also would like to say that I think that we have to encourage students to take, and I just want one more thing, Sky. I just want to encourage all parents to sign up for summer school. It's important that they go back to school during the summer. We have a great program out there, so sign up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Doug Schneider, your number one issue, and how are you going to fix it?
Sure, thanks, Guy. So, my campaign is focused on what we call school sidewalks and civil rights. And, my focus really, when I talk about sidewalks, I'm talking about street safety. Over the last 10 years, the 39th Council District has seen an epidemic level of traffic violence that has actually only gotten worse. The last year was actually one of our worst years in a long time in terms of traffic violence and traffic fatalities. The 39th Council District has some of the worst roads in the entire city. We suffer from dangerous street designs. Our indifference to our sidewalks too often make it impossible for the disabled or the elderly or people pushing strollers to get around our city. Everybody walking down the street, driving, biking is familiar with trucks double parking, making midday deliveries that tie up our streets, creating dangerous conditions for drivers, pedestrians, and bikers. And of course, our mass transit is largely inaccessible to thousands of New Yorkers, and our biking infrastructure is poor. And so I've released a comprehensive transportation and street safety plan to address these things. And among other things, my plan would expand the use of automated enforcement measures like speed cameras and red light cameras, put in safety infrastructure improvements around schools, things like daylighting, things like curb extensions to make it easier for our kids to cross the street, building a 425-mile network of protected bike lanes across all 5 boroughs, creating more permanent multi-use open streets that support outdoor dining and play streets and public performances, reducing that double parking that I was talking about before by restricting commercial deliveries throughout New York City to off-peak hours. And one that is, a real unique obsession of mine is requiring the Department of Sanitation to clear crosswalks and curb cuts when it snows. the snow plows come and they bury the curb cuts and the crosswalks, and they never get cleared. And it's a civil rights issue that people can't get around this city. And so that is a priority of mine, is to make sure that our curbs and our sidewalks are accessible when it snows and when it doesn't.
Thank you. And as you were talking, it's interesting about you talked about traffic violations, and that reminds me of Brad Lander. This is his district, and he was in that story about him getting all those traffic violations, like 180 tickets he got around the school area. So I wonder if he would say, oh, it's just because, the streets aren't made correctly, or, that we need more of that fixed. Interesting. Okay. That was just a side note. Next, let's go to Shahana. What's your number one issue, and what you would do to focus on it if you were elected?
Thank you so much. So it is time to desegregate and decarcerate our schools. And so I want to build on the conversation we're having about education.
Sure.
I'm a former PS 230 student right here in Kensington, and I've navigated schools in and outside of Brooklyn, graduated from Brooklyn CUNY College. And so it is important for me that we double down on recognizing that it is high time to desegregate our schools. New York City is among the most segregated school districts in the country. And so what we've seen through COVID is the removal of middle school screenings actually aided in bringing in more free and reduced lunch eligible students into the schools. This should be made permanent. So we've got to abolish screens, and these conversations must be had with teachers. I've been hosting these listening sessions with our educators within the School District 15 network, parents, principals, and students to gather community input. The way we desegregate and integrate our schools and school communities is by having direct conversations with the folks who are in these buildings day in, day out. And so from the conversations I've had with educators is that I've learned that you can abolish screens, but you also need to do these things to have integrated schools by supporting the monitoring of what is happening with the D15 diversity plan. So we need evaluation and monitoring. That has not happened. We need to I'm committed to recruiting and retaining diverse school educators, supporting and using the foundation aid money that we've won through the state and the work of the Alliance for Quality Education to support educators who are implementing culturally responsive pedagogy. And so school desegregation and integration are my top issue for the 39th.
Thank you. A lot of focus on schools here. Let's go to Jessica Simmons.
Perfect timing. That's my number one issue as well. I agree with everything, for the most part, everyone said about education. I think if your issue is education, though, I would be the best person to vote for. I've been in education for 20 years. I've been a principal. I've been a teacher. And I currently work with schools across the country on a variety of issues. So I advise schools and school districts on the reopening with COVID, on the incorporation of culturally responsive curriculum, on I ran in New York City a teacher talent program to get teachers of color into math and science positions in our schools. And we were running a pipeline of 63% people of color. I have the accomplishments to make this happen. And I really think that what we need to do is look beyond just the 5 days. Yes, I want school to be open 5 days. I would love for my 8-year-old to be in school for 5 days while my husband and I are working our full-time jobs at home. And I think we need to be looking beyond that and saying, what would it mean for kids in our city to have a 21st century education? And in our community, where we call ourselves so progressive, what does it say about us if students in our community still have a racial equity gap? If you can determine right now the outcomes of students in our district based on their race, socioeconomic status, or zip code, then we have not yet achieved racial equity. So I have done the work to do this. I'm on the Community Education Council in District 13. I voted this year against screens in middle schools in 13. I voted against gifted and talented, which is unfortunately keeping our schools segregated. And I've been a part of our anti-racist town halls as a district. So there's one thing that I believe I am fully qualified to lead us through the next phase. It would be education. And it would be a privilege to actually be able to engage on that as a council member and not just on CEC and as a parent.
Very nice. Thank you. And Mamnun, what's your number one issue, and how would you fix it in the council?
All right, thank you. I'm not against it. I mean, I'm in favor of school. It is also a priority, but I have to discuss something else because most of the things already said here. I'm a parent and I raised 3 kids and all my children went to public school. I'm a very favorable public school parents. And as if I get elected, I'll make sure like public school get like adequate funding. And but besides that, look, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country. So many immigrants came from other country, just try to survive. If you cannot survive, then how you can ensure your kids are going to better school and getting better life. So what happening with current situation after a pandemic? I'm a former cab driver. I drove cab for a long time. The New York City cab business almost dead. Thousands of families are suffering all over New York City. There's a large number of taxi cab drivers and Uber and Lyft drivers are living in my district, especially in Kensington and Borough Park and Coney Island, this part of the area, and even a part of Park Slope. And they are dire in need to survival. I mean, there is no business, no income. You cannot depend only for a few $100 unemployment. You have a family, you have to make sure you have to bring food on the table for the family. So as an advocate, as a the former cab driver and the co-founder of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance, who advocated for the taxi cab drivers' rights, respect, and dignity and safety in workplace for all my life, I want to make sure first bringing this cab business in the city. Yellow cab business, this is the culture of New York City. I want to make sure the cab drivers are going back to work and able to bring food for their family. And so that's the first thing I'm gonna do, stop the predatory lending and medallion debt forgiveness and reduce the medallion cost and leases so they can survive and they can bring more money home. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see there are very specific questions coming in. I don't know if we will get to dive into all of these. I see some of the candidates have answered them in this Q&A here, but maybe let's open it up to have you guys ask each other questions, and maybe we'll incorporate some of these questions into your questions. Because again, the goal here is for voters to differentiate candidates from one another to decide who to vote for. Look at these questions coming in. All right. People are asking about quality of life issues, look, drainage issues, landlord issues, all kinds of things. So maybe I'll give you guys the opportunity to ask each other questions. Let's begin with Briget Rein.
So Ms. Hanif, I want to ask you a question. You were the community director with Brad Lander's office. And as you see, the Gowanus rezoning is happening. And the Gowanus rezoning was without community voice. How did you allow community to speak out? As a member of the Gowanus Voices, the Gowanus Voice and Frogs, I am a member. I have written an op-ed regarding the Gowanus rezoning, and I think that we're not ready for this rezoning. We'd like to make it cleaner. But how did you, as the community director, how did you bring voice into this community that really doesn't think that this rezoning should happen?
Briget, thank you so much for your question. And I'd like to clarify that during my time as Councilmember Brad Lander's Director of Organizing and Community Engagement, I had no role with our land use work pertaining to Gowanus. So that is a question you should ask our land use director, who can talk more about the rezoning plan and the process of our office. I was organizing to make sure that we were prioritizing equity and participatory budgeting. But to go back to the Gowanus rezoning, I do not agree with our council member stance. I am in opposition to the plan as is. And as a former tenant organizer organizing public housing residents, it is imperative that we include the voices of our neighbors, longstanding neighbors, and particularly NYCHA residents, our public housing residents who continue to bear the brunt of the city-led land use proposals, real estate-driven proposals that that continue to displace our neighbors. And when land use decisions take place, because NYCHA residents aren't included from default, they bear the brunt of displacement and privatization, at risk of being at privatization of the units they live in. And so what I'd like to do is create stronger anti-harassment and anti-discrimination laws to protect our residents, and particularly NYCHA residents. I am against the privatization of NYCHA. And until we fully fund NYCHA demands for the unmet repairs in the NYCHA buildings, I will continue to be in opposition of the Gowanus rezoning plan.
Thank you. Shahana, do you have a question for one of your friends here on the screen?
Let's see. So I don't actually see the questions coming in. Were you mentioning that there were questions? No, I don't.
There's this Q&A. Who can see this?
I can't see it.
Some
Can
people
anybody see it? Well,
You
no
meant
word.
any question we had, Sky. You meant choose from the audience questions?
No.
Okay, I'll ask a question. I will.
Question.
Absolutely. I will ask my question to Jessica. So I'm so happy that you uplifted the challenges of running as a woman, and a woman who has not been a part of political spaces and the ladder of the electoral space. And I relate. And so as a woman of color, I've experienced the issues of running. And so I'd love to know how this experience has been for you, and what your hopes are for women of color running as first-time candidates.
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I mean, my hopes are that we get more women in office, that of these 34 positions that are open, that more of us are represented, women, and particularly women of color. I think these times are unique, and we have this opportunity. For too long, we've just done the status quo, which has been elect white men who are lawyers and business owners, get them into office, and then they have to invite everyone else to the table, and they say, oh, we need people of color, we need women, we need moms. I say, let's just cut that out and elect a woman to start. I think we really have an opportunity here in our city to uplift the voices of women, of moms, of women of color. And so if I were elected, I would be standing for all women, and also recognizing that I'm only representing part of our district. And it would be very important to me that all parts of our district are represented in staffing, in the work that we're doing, and that we're constantly in touch with all parts of our district. So we're not just speaking to the place where we live or the place that represents us. So thanks, Shahana, for that.
Thank you. Now, Jessica, do you have a question? Any question for any of your friends here on the screen?
Sure. I mean, I guess I would pose that question. I mean, I don't know how people identify, but perhaps to Justin and Doug to say, tell us if some of us believe we shouldn't have the status quo, like what makes you the right candidate if some people believe we need to change it up and not vote for white men anymore?
You can each answer, Justin and Doug.
I'll go for it. Thanks, Jessica. So we need to elect more women. We need to elect more people of color all across the city and all across the country. In the work that I've done, whether it's been at Move On or at the work we do at the Tank, which is the theater I built, or the work I do in parent organizing, I think very intentionally about how to uplift gender and racial justice in that work. And we need men and white allies wherever they are, whether it's an elected office or otherwise, to be doing that. I've definitely been told by people who I know in my own neighborhood, some of whom are watching this video right now, Justin, we really like you, and we're not going to vote for a white man this year. I am not going to try to convince them otherwise. We have three great, I believe, women candidates on, when I say believe, I don't know how everyone identifies. We have 3 candidates that I believe are women who are terrific on the stage. We have 3 people of color on the stage in this Zoom room. So there are a lot of great choices. The beauty of ranked choice voting is that there's no spoiler effect. So I hope I can still earn people's votes. By the way, I do lift up racial and gender justice in the work that I've done, in the work that I want to do moving forward on schools, in the way I talk about small businesses, in the way I think about climate reform. And ultimately, I'm running based on the experience that I bring as someone who's built and run organizations, as somebody who's seeing the city through the eyes of my 3 children and the work I want to do in schools. And that's how I would answer it for whoever asks. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Doug. It's a hard time to be a white man.
Yeah, and you know what? It is something that I was very introspective about. It is something that I spent a long time thinking about, and going over that question in my head before deciding to run, and I recognize, I'm a straight white man in a time where people, myself included, are clamoring for more diverse representation. And if at the end of the day that is, that's drives the decision a voter makes, I respect that I won't be that person's first choice. And I, like Justin, just say with ranked choice voting, I would ask, for you to consider me as your second choice. I waited a long time before deciding to run because I wanted to see how the race developed. And as it did, it became increasingly clear to me that the top issues that the next council is going to be dealing with are the ones that I've been working on for years, and the ones that I'm passionate about, and the ones that I think I can bring a unique voice to. And there was one moment in particular back at the beginning of the pandemic when schools closed on a Sunday. The mayor announced that schools were going to be closing the next day. And that announcement, if schools were going to close, should have come no later than Thursday or Friday. And it became clear to me that we live in a city that cancels restaurants with 4 days notice, but cancels school with 4 hours notice. And the reason why is because there aren't parent voices on the council. There aren't people who are sitting in that room when it's time to make a decision, thinking about what they're going to do tomorrow for their own childcare. So like I said, I won't begrudge anybody who makes a different choice, but I do genuinely believe that I am the best candidate in this race at this time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, we can keep going the questions, but now I want to bring Brandon into the conversation, go back to that police topic that we said we were going to talk about, if that works for everyone. I know, yeah, it's a hot button issue, and I know that you're passionate about it, Brandon.
Totally, yeah. I'm happy to talk about it, and I think this connects to really how we fund and support communities, and it's actually really relevant to the 39th. I believe if we have real public safety, that means we've invested in our communities and we're not over policing them. And that means when people's everyday needs are met, the communities are safe. So we talk about violence, and violence happens in our community because there's violence when someone gets evicted. There's violence in one's life when they have unmitigated mental health issues. These are all forms of violence. And when we overinvest in policing and cops, it's too late. It's already too late. We're not dealing with the symptoms. And I think it's very important that we really actually build a budget and take away from over policing and put it into the things that do keep communities safe. Like, we don't have social workers in schools, we don't have enough guidance counselors, but we have a lot of police officers, we have a lot of helicopters, we have $40,000 police dogs, robot dogs. We're funding our city in a way that isn't really addressing the ways of keeping communities strong. And I think this is very important. And there's a lot of talk about sort of reform, like we can have body cameras and we can reform the system, but that doesn't work because every reform we've had, the police have really tried to undermine. If that was CCRB, if this was, other forms of accountability structures, like they find a way to get around it. So what we need to do is funding alternatives to that. And that includes a mental health response team that aren't police officers that can respond to 911 calls, because I think around 40% or more of 911 calls are related to mental health episodes. This is something where we have to build out, but also this impacts the programs that get funded, because we bottom line this police budget that's gone up regardless of how much crime there is in the city in the last few years, but we have to fight for restorative justice programs in our schools. We have to fight for addressing the needs of the most marginalized, like foster care folks, folks who are dealing with ICE raids in their community. We have to fight for that part of the budget, but we bottom line across the whole system. So this is something that I think really matters a lot in the 39th, because a lot of invisible communities are impacted by it.
Mm-hmm. Would anyone like to respond to this topic? No? Briget?
Okay, I gotta thank Brandon for his answer. I think we need to reimagine the police department, and how we reimagine the police department is by making sure that the city council is the hiring agent for the police commissioner, and make sure that the city council has oversight on the day-to-day structure of the police department, and make sure that we strengthen the CCRB, make sure that we have, as Brandon said, and I agree with Brandon, more social workers, more mental health officers, social workers and psychologists at the police station. We've got to strengthen our community. And we also have to have that community voice. And everybody should be attending our precinct councils. I think they're a very good tool to know what's happening in the community that deals with crime. So, and it's just not just a ComStat report. It's more than that. It's talking to our friends and our neighbors. I know that you're giving me the signal, but I'm just saying to you, we have to reimagine this, and we have to make sure that we are dealing with public safety and mental health.
Thank you. And I know Mamnun, I want to bring you into the conversation. You were nodding about this issue.
All right, thank you. Yes, I mean, we have to actually dig out the real cause of the problem. And my understanding is the city never did it well. And I believe the police reforming and transparency and accountability. But simply defunding, I believe, is not the solution. But yes, I want to reallocate some money, which is Brandon mentioned, like, they're using $40,000 for dogs, or like using more choppers. I think we can reduce money from there, reallocate, and invest this money in the community for culturally competent mental health program, re-entry program, housing program. Those are really important. Even personally, I don't want to see the police in school. That has to go away. We can reinvest that money in a school for guidance counselor and also social worker. But you see, I'm a minority man. I'm living in a community. I spoke so many Bangladeshi peoples, and even like another minority community. I asked them, like, do you want police in the community? They said, what are you talking about? Minority community, all the time they want police. But the problem is, unfortunately, police never treated minority community well, even right now, not. So we have to fix this first. But just simply defunding, that's a different story. But I'm saying we have to fix this. We have to bring this relationship, which is Briget says, like, if you go to the community council, I attend there, I understand what they're talking about. I personally got the training from the NYPD Police Citizen Academy program. So it is really important. We need to understand, we need to build this relationship with the police. And, but yes, the budget is high. We don't want to spend some budget, which is unnecessary spending in the police department. We can reinvest in a better cause of our community. That's really important. I think we should go for it.
Thank you. And I know there are a lot of good questions coming in, and I don't know who can see them and who can't, but I see that some people are answering them. But I'm going to ask one to everyone right now, which is from Gregory. And he asked, what is a lesson in each candidate's experience in public service that guides how they serve now and how they would serve if they're elected? So this is an opportunity to talk about an experience that you've had or that you want to demonstrate that would guide what you do if you're elected. And let's do 1 minute each on this so we have enough time for concluding thoughts. Okay, Briget, let's begin with you. You're on mute. I'm going to time everything.
As the City Hall liaison for the United Federation of Teachers, I've negotiated budgets of millions of dollars. I have legislated bills that I have created alongside city council members. I have also done, I've done the committee work in terms of observing committees, making sure that the committees are in the straight and narrow with education. I've talked to them. Brandon and I had a conversation. He remembers me at the council. I was a strong person. And I think my experience as a City Hall liaison of bringing millions of dollars to education makes me the right person to be the next city council member for the 39th.
Awesome. Brandon, let's go to you.
So every issue we've talked about today is an issue that has existed during 2020, before 2020. These are the same challenges that we've faced. And my experience is, I do a lot of advocacy work and coalition building, but I've also spent time behind the scenes doing in the bureaucratic space for a couple of years, not a ton of time, but for a little bit of time. And from that, I can tell you that we have the right talking points, election cycle shows up, everyone's talking about the right things. And then behind the scenes, bad politics leads to bad policy. People who were standing up in one space start to wilt because they have either political ambitions or they don't have the political capital they want to spend for whatever reason, we get worse versions of the ideas that we're voting for. And I think we have to bring in a movement energy and movement ethos to policymaking. And that means bringing folks together earlier and actually centering the marginalized and crafting the policy together at earlier stages. And that is something that I've experienced, just seeing how it happens behind the scenes when the sausage gets made when the budget process, either at City Council Finance or at OMB, when you're dealing with agencies that are fighting each other. I think this is something that I've experienced, and it's something that I will center throughout everything that I'm doing as a council member.
Thank you. Doug, let's go to you.
So about, I don't know, 1999 to 2002, I worked for Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley from Las Vegas, Nevada. And she was a role model. And what she really taught me was that being a representative is not about taking as much credit as you can for passing legislation or for the work that other people do, but it's really listening and working for the people who live in your neighborhood, the people who you are representing. And so I had an opportunity to represent a woman who had saved her life and her family's life by painting paintings of the people that Dr. Mengele was going to do tests on at Auschwitz. And she saved her life because she was a talented painter. And those paintings we thought were lost for forever. And the Congresswoman asked me to work in coalition with others to try to locate and get these paintings back for this woman. And it was such a selfless act. It was such a lesson in the obligation of a representative to work for the people, to listen to the people, and to try to help them with what they need, with what's hurting them right now, with how government can help them.
Thank you. Shahana, let's go to you.
Thank you. What keeps bringing me back to the fight is my own story. I survived, and I've been organizing to change systems and systemic inequities across the city for over 13 years now. I survived lupus while navigating the city's nebulous healthcare system, where my parents didn't have language accessible materials to understand what was happening to me as a 17-year-old. I recognize that language justice must be a city priority, and we have failed our city, especially through the pandemic, which is why I'm calling for a citywide interpretation fund. And the second thing that brings me to this work is the countless survivors of domestic violence I've supported in and outside of my work in the city council and at Sakhi for South Asian. We've had leaders in my community say, bring the survivor back because I trust the family, I trust their ex-partner, etc. We cannot have leaders who double down on harm. And so I have consistently led with courage. I have led in times when folks in my own community doubted what I was doing. I do this work because we need to expand care in our city. It is long overdue, and we cannot accept any more doubling down of harming marginalized communities. So we need a citywide interpretation fund. We need a citywide survivor security fund. Gender equity is the biggest priority for me in this city. I want to see women elected. Women like me don't get opportunities to run. And so this fight has been long, it's been tiring, but I've been energized by the outpour of love I've seen in my own community, the Bangladeshi community, which will be voting in droves for me, and the coalition we've built city district-wide in my support. I'm excited because we are all unified in building a city that is rooted in a care economy.
Thank you. Let's go to Jessica Simmons.
When I think about what brings me to the work, I think about the many students I've served over the past 20 years. And I started a school in 2008 in Brownsville, in a different community in Brooklyn, and met a student there who I will remain anonymous because I didn't ask permission to tell a story, but he was a kid who was struggling as a 5th grade boy, probably the way my own son is going to struggle in 5th grade, had trouble paying attention, had trouble following along. At the time, we were using a practice I would not use anymore, where we had kids who we thought were the lowest in a certain class, so we could provide them more support. I don't recommend, that's not a good instructional practice, but we had done a lot of things to support these children over the 4 years they were in my middle school and then the 4 years in high school. This student, who's an African-American young man, went on to go to Bates College. He's about to graduate this year, and he's coming back to Brooklyn, where he's from, to be a teacher, and his ultimate goal is to be a principal. And that to me is the full circle of this work, of being able to use my work and my role to help students and families, be in partnership with them. And then to see a student like him come back and take over where I was, that's exactly what we want from our communities. And that's what keeps me going.
Awesome story. Thank you. Mamnun, what about you?
Look, my experience of organizing New York City taxi cab drivers. And I came to the political arena and working with the community and with the workers because of my taxi driving. I have seen how the taxi drivers are treated at that time still, and also the fare theft and discriminated people that cannot have their good work and the working conditions. So I started to organize in taxi cab drivers, and I co-founded the Taxi Workers Alliance. And I feel so proud. This is the largest taxi cab union in the country, and I'm the board of director of the Taxi Workers Alliance. So we work. We have changed. I along with my organization, we have changed so many rules and regulations from the taxi industry. That's my experience. I'm serving in the community board for last 11 years, and last 10 years I'm serving on the executive committee. I built a very good relationship, interfaith relationship with the community board member, Borough Park, Kensington, part of the Windsor Terrace, and through my participatory budgeting, I built a better relationship with people from Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, and the Cobble Hill, Gowanus area. And I have done that work. I do have that experience. And also, as a healthcare worker, I started to, just give me a few seconds, I'm going to finish that. It's really important. Nobody talked about very seriously about healthcare, because this is the priority of New York City right now. And I am the only candidate who is sitting here and talking who do have that experience. I worked at NYC School of Medicine for 13 years, helped so many people from South Asia and Asian community, how they can survive, how they can prevent and treat their chronic health. So this is really important. My plan is, if I get elected, I'm going to bring a pool of community health workers in New York City and hiring them and training them from their own community, and they can go directly to their community to serve, which is really important. I mean, we cannot wait for another pandemic. So this is really important. That's one of the priority in my experience. And I believe, and the relationship I built in the district, and I became the champion of the translation and the Brad Lander's first ballot I translated into Bangla. And then I want to see that across the city, like translation to their own languages, because as an immigrant, I faced those problems in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. I hate cutting people off. But as you said, we have only 3 minutes left, and you're right. We didn't get to talk about a lot of the issues, but that's what happens in these 1 hour debates. Justin, we didn't get to you. Let's hear you.
Let's do it. I love everyone's stories, and I love getting to know the candidates through this. So thank you, Sky. Here's my story. My first job in public service was working for Senator Hillary Clinton. Maybe you've heard of her. It was when she opened her office, and the office director said, here's the deal. Senator Clinton is going to be a workhorse, not a show horse. You are all going to work just as hard. You know what I was doing? I wasn't doing sexy West Wing policy, walking through the halls. I was answering constituent concerns about housing, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, Medicare, Medicaid. And we were told, take every concern seriously, talk to every constituent. That's your job. And that's been my job ever since. For 20 years, I've been building organizations where I talk with folks directly. If I want to understand something, I go there and I understand it directly. If I want to understand street safety in our district, I bike every block of the district. It's 5 miles end to end. It's 120 miles, all the streets in our district. And I've biked all 120 miles to see how the road safety is. If I want to understand climate, I talk to the folks who are impacted. That's why I've received the support of the League of Conservation Voters. That's why I'm focused on climate practices in our district. If I want to talk about arts, I talk to artists. That's why I have over 100 artists who have endorsed me. If I want to talk about schools, I talk to parent leaders, to teachers, to administrators. That's why I'm so proud of the 35 the PTA leaders who have endorsed the campaign from across the district. If I want to talk about birth in New York, that's why I talk to midwives. My wife is a midwife, and last week we held a forum with midwives, doulas, birth professionals, and advocates to talk about improving birth experience in New York. In all of these cases, the key is talk to the folks who are practicing, talk to the folks who are impacted, talk to the folks who are at the center, treat every concern seriously. Every constituent is your boss. Be the workhorse, not the show horse. For 20 plus years, that has been a driving experience of the work that I do.
Thank you. again, there are a lot of good questions that came in through the chat. We have 1 minute left, so I just want to go around really quick for everyone to leave the voters and the viewers with just one word or one phrase that really represents who you are and what you stand for. And let's begin with Shahana.
Trustworthy.
Mamnun.
Very loyal and trustworthy. I'm very loyal.
Brandon.
Collaboration.
Jessica.
Equity.
Justin.
Building social capital and schools, schools, schools.
Briget.
Effective, and I'm a teacher.
And Doug.
Compassion, help, and problem solver.
There you go, District 39. Thank you so much to the candidates for being part of this. Thank you on behalf of Schneps Media and PoliticsNY. We are here to amplify your voice. So submit your op-eds, tag us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. This was recorded. It'll be on our website within the next couple of days at politicsny.com/debates. Thank you. Thank you to our audience. And thank you to Brooklyn Public Library for amplifying the message. And further, good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you,
all
Sky,
so
who's
much.
moderated 3 of
Bye,
these
Sky,
tonight.
you're
Thank you,
wonderful.
Sky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations,
Bye.
Sky.
Bye, Sky.